Hey guys, what's happening? Niad here with Film Comics Explained. As requested, today we'll be diving into the HBO adaptation of The Last of Us by Craig Mazin, the creator of the Chernobyl miniseries, and Neil Druckmann, co-president of Naughty Dog, known for his work on the Uncharted and The Last of Us game series. It's safe to say that video game adaptations rarely work. Most productions are doomed from the get-go, with companies merely wanting to exploit an IP and the fan base to turn over some quick cash. Then you have the issue of transposing a gaming experience where the player is an active participant to the world and story to one where they're a passive viewer. Of course, then there's problems with cramming 20 hours of gaming content, DLCs, Easter eggs, character motivations and objectives, conflict, and complex storytelling elements into a movie with a runtime of 90 minutes. Spread across 9 episodes, Season 1 of The Last of Us avoids many of these pitfalls in a mostly faithful adaptation. Like the game, we follow Joel and Ellie in a harrowing journey across the post-apocalyptic wasteland, trying to find the proverbial and symbolic light at the end of the tunnel. Traveling across abandoned cities that were destroyed 20 years ago due to a global cordyceps outbreak, the two learn about each other, the new world setting they must traverse, its many factions and organizations vying for power, the cordyceps infection, the infected, in addition to there being a hope for a cure. In this video, we're going to break down all these elements and more.
What are we doing, Joe?
On September 26, 2003, known as Outbreak Day, the cordyceps infection went haywire. Within days, the global pandemic of the cordyceps fungus resulted in the collapse of modern civilization. In the prelude, epidemiologist Dr. Newman explained how the cordyceps would infect insects like ants, first infesting their bloodstream, then reaching their brains. There it would flood them with hallucinogens that would manipulate the host's will and lead them to do as the fungus desired. The epidemiologist specified that the fungus differed greatly from viruses in that its aim was to control, not kill. In particular, he noted how cordyceps would replace its host's skin with its own. It then prevented decomposition so that the host remained alive and served its need to spread its spores to other non-infected animals, foreshadowing things to come. Newman also prophesied that the fungus would evolve to be able to infect humans as a result of rising atmospheric temperatures. He believed this would lead to mutations and adaptations, enabling cordyceps to tolerate the increased heat within its environment. Whereas the human internal body temperature had previously been too high for the fungus, these evolutionary changes would enable it to find a new source of nutrients and propagation through humanity. In 2003, Newman's prediction became a reality. On September the 23rd, 3 days before the outbreak day, the cordyceps brain infection emerged in Jakarta. The first sign of its spread was noticed at a flour and grain factory. There, its deadly symptoms were observed in one of the workers and 3 others whom she'd violently attacked and infected. An additional 14 workers then went missing, triggering panic amongst the military and health officials of Indonesia.
Kemari untuk membantu kami untuk mencegah penyebaran. Kami butuh vaksin. Butuh obat.
Tidak ada obat dan tidak ada vaksin.
Jadi apa yang harus kami lakukan, Bu?
Bom.
Despite warnings by Dr. Ratnab Pertui to contain the outbreak through drastic measures, Jakarta's role in international flour and grain distribution led to contaminated products such as bread, cereal, and pancake mix being distributed internationally. The products hit supermarkets in the US, Australia, Canada, South America, and parts of Europe on Thursday, September 25th. People who consumed enough of the contaminated products over the following day soon became infected and were admitted en masse to emergency rooms, quickly overwhelming hospitals. Joel, Sarah, and Tommy avoided having flour-based products such as pancakes, biscuits, cookies, and cake on Outbreak Day, whereas their neighbors, the Adlers, are seen making and consuming the food before their infection. The fungus then began influencing the behavior of the infected, triggering them to start violently attacking people in an effort to spread the infection. The outbreak manifested on September 26 with large numbers of infected attacking and killing or infecting many people around them. By the early hours of the next day, the government declared a state of national emergency and mobilized the Federal Disaster Response Agency, the United States military, and local law enforcement to halt the spread of the infection. In Austin, Texas, where our story with Joel and his family begins, the military blocked the highway leading away from the city and set up a base for residents to flee to. The city erupted into chaos. Police cars rushed to key areas, setting up roadblocks to contain citizens believed to be infected, only for the infected to overrun them. Gas leaks then spread, causing explosions that set most buildings ablaze, and with no firefighters left, Austin and all the major cities continued to burn for weeks. By September 30, only small remote towns and locations in the countryside were free of high numbers of infected. To prevent the quarantine zones from being overwhelmed by cordyceps, federal officials sent out soldiers to these areas and retrieved survivors to boost their numbers, often against their will. In Lincoln, Massachusetts, the military rounded up the town's citizens for evacuation to nearby Boston, where FEDRA had established a quarantine zone. However, when they realized they'd run out of space, the soldiers immediately executed all of the evacuees and left their bodies in a mass grave. Only a single resident named Bill survived the massacre, hiding in his bunker after correctly deducing the fate that would befall the other townspeople. Joel would also later reveal to Ellie that FEDRA and the military justified the executions by saying that killing them would prevent them from becoming infected. The cordyceps brain infection, known as CBI, is basically a parasitic fungal infection that devastated the human body. Upon entering the bloodstream, it caused a number of symptoms, including coughing, slurred speech, muscle spasms, and mood changes during the progression of the infection until it completely took over higher brain function. Victims became animalistic, hyper-aggressive, and unable to reason or think rationally, relying solely on the warped basic instinct to feed, leading to a desire to spread the infection to as many people as physically possible. The fungus has also been shown to be capable of restoring physical functions to deficient hosts. For example, when an injured person is infected, they regain some of their movement, even including the ability to run. Using their heightened sense of smell, dogs are capable of detecting the fungus within a human before the fungal infection develops symptoms. While the outbreak began due to contaminated food, the infection multiplied exponentially as a result of bites and scratches from the infected that transmitted tainted blood. The time the victim had before transforming depended on where they were infected. A bite on the neck, face, or head would transform them in 5 to 15 minutes. Infection on the torso, arm, shoulder, or hands gave them 2 to 8 hours, whereas bites on the legs or feet took about 12 to 24 hours to overwhelm the host. The fungus also grew underground, with an extensive system of nerve-like fibers growing for miles, connecting all the infected together like a hive mind. This meant that disturbing one patch of cordyceps could alert another, with a horde of infected waking up for breakfast. It's also important to note that as a parasite that needed a live host to live, the cordyceps fungus was unable to infect dead tissue or cells. The cordyceps brain infection created multiple variants of infected. The infected are basically humans that have been altered by the cordyceps brain infection and subsequently mutated into horrific new forms in The Last of Us. Once infected, the host would suffer extreme symptoms. The fungus then eventually hijacked the motor functions and took control of the body, turning them violently aggressive. They were then compelled to attack and infect other people in order to spread the infection. When in a passive mode, many of the infected tended to lie down, allowing the fungus to emanate from their body. It gradually then attached them to the environment, creating a breeding ground for cordyceps until they eventually die and sprouted more spores. According to Joel, the passive hordes of infected tend to only appear in highly populated areas like cities, with the countryside being too remote for large numbers to gather. Indeed, the remote town of Lincoln only had the occasional wandering infected. However, not every infected remained passive. While most go on to die and become a permanent breeding ground, a rare few continue to evolve further. Because of the continued development of fungal growth throughout the body, especially around the face, the infected eventually go blind as the fungus grows over or outright destroys their eyes. To compensate for this, the infected in later stages of evolution developed a heightened sense of echolocation, generating croaking and clicking noises to detect sounds and objects in their environment. Throughout Season 1, we've seen a number of variants that highlight the different stages of evolution, from the runner, the stalker, the clicker, to the bloater. Runners are those in the early stages of infection. Still resembling humans, their eyes are bloodshot and dilated, and clusters of veins can be seen pulsating through their skin. Most notably, dozens of slender tendrils formed from mycelium will begin to emerge from the mouth. It is through these tendrils that they spread the infection to other humans. As people under the control of the cordyceps fungus, these infected exhibit animalistic behavior akin to creatures infected with rabies. Because the fungus hijacked their motor controls, they often displayed violent muscle spasms. They also scream and gasp heavily, especially after spotting prey. Highly aggressive and active, they're compelled by the fungus to attack non-infected humans. This urge removes any sense of self-preservation, causing them to sprint and leap at their target, even if it led to self-injury or even death. They essentially will not stop until they take down their target or are taken down in the pursuit of uninfected individuals. While they are a terrifying sight to behold, their feral nature does make them predictable. This meant it was easy to kill them with traps, weapons, fire, and clever engineering.
Oh, it doesn't get old.
A stalker is an infected in the next stage of transformation. Somewhat resembling humans and just as aggressive as the runner, the stalkers are a bit more durable, stronger, and physically more capable than their counterparts. A notable difference is that the hyphae of the fungus grows under the skin, creating noticeable bumps and grooves. Fungal plates also emerge from the skin, along with an unknown green discharge. Their eyes and skin then turn yellow, presumably a sign that the fungus has destroyed the liver. The most notable characteristic of this stage, however, is that the fungus explodes out of the eyes in a truly disfiguring and horrific fashion. A clicker is a person that has been infected for a longer period of time, leading to further horrific mutations. Due to the advanced fungal growth on their brains, their skull splits in two in order to make space for continued growth. Horrifically, this process left their faces completely skewed and scarred, with only a more of jagged teeth remaining. The blindness that results from the excessive fungal growth led the clickers to develop a rudimentary form of echolocation to see their surroundings, from which they get their name. By this point, whatever clothes the host may have been wearing are mostly tattered and destroyed, and unlike the previous two stages, this later form lacks the fungal tendrils in their mouths. Clickers have large patches of rashes all over their body, as well as small fungal growths, creating large scale-like tissue on the exterior, especially around the necks and shoulders. They also have enhanced strength and durability. In the show, a clicker took multiple gunshots to the body from Joel's rifle, while another still had the strength and durability to knock Tess back after she hacked into its armor-plated head with an axe. Despite this, they could be killed by a good shot to the head, or enough blunt force trauma that can pierce the thick fungus protecting the infected brain. They can generally be found croaking and whining, limping around their space while waiting for a sound to hijack their focus. When they do hear a noise, they immediately run toward the sound without hesitation. Fast, agile, and extremely athletic, once they've found their target, their go-to attack is to disarm their prey through savagery. If you thought the clicker was bad, bloaters are an even rarer and far more advanced stage of infected that succeed the clicker stage. Taking the longest to evolve because the host had to be strong enough to survive the extensive infection, the bloater is the most powerful and largest known variant seen in the show so far. Enormous in size, they easily tower over the humans and infected around them. Here the fungus has grown to an excessive degree, causing the body to bloat and create fungal plates that act as biological body armor. This fungal tank is able to withstand barrages of bullets from assault rifles before using their incredible strength to literally rip people in half. Despite their immense size and strength, they are noticeably slower than the earlier infected variants who can easily outrun them. And unlike the lesser infected who merely wanted to spread cordyceps, bloaters do not seem to be compelled to do so. Their goal is solely to outright defend the cordyceps by killing anything that poses a threat to the hive. Even after an infected individual has died, the fungus will continue to grow, consuming the mass to form a fruiting body. The process causes the corpse to become brittle, fusing the remains to surfaces as it continued to grow. As sufficient time passed, the fruiting body became a moss that could fill entire structures with deadly fungal growths the color of pasty human flesh. In the game, this would then release spores that infect humans who breathe them in, which is why survivors had to use gas masks to prevent this. Both of the spores in the fruiting body do end up quickly dying when exposed to sunlight though, limiting the danger they presented.
Back.
In the ashes of the old world, new factions and tribes emerged, vying for both power and survival, from the United States military, the Federal Disaster Response Agency, the Fireflies, the Kansas City Resistance, raiders, cannibals, communes to fractured survivors. In 2003, the military were deployed by the US government with assistance of Fedra in response to the chaos erupting from the outbreak of the cordyceps brain infection.
Shit! Fucking army.
Isn't that good?
It's good for them, but that's the highway we're trying to get to.
In Austin, they were deployed along the river and highway in Travis County to keep all potentially infected people out of uninfected zones. One soldier was guarding the river when he spotted Joel Miller carrying his daughter Sarah while running away from an infected man. Despite killing the infected and saving their lives, upon getting orders to shoot everyone as the uninfected zones couldn't accommodate any more survivors, he opened fire on the pair, mortally wounding Sarah. On the day after the outbreak, the army created emergency medical camps within cities they managed to gain control over. Here they worked to treat people who'd been injured or wounded during the chaos, including Joel, who was transported to a triage unit after his failed attempt to end his life. As the military began establishing formal zones of containment in the cities, the bases were abandoned in favor of more secure medical facilities. According to Joel, they used massive plows to clear abandoned cars from highways to enable tank and military convoys to kill the infected and establish more quarantine zones. By 2023, the military had been significantly reduced in size and largely merged with the Federal Disaster Response Agency as the only remaining remnants of the US government. Heavily armed and dangerous, they make use of helicopters, armored vehicles, and equipment believed to be supplied to them by the remaining government manufacturing centers, such as a factory in the Atlanta quarantine zone. The soldiers are charged with creating and running the quarantine zones, keeping the remaining population safe from infection by any means necessary. Under federal authority, the military run the QZs with an iron fist, executing dissidents such as the Fireflies and any rule breakers under emergency powers granted during the outbreak. They still remain a powerful adversary, evidenced in their continued control of large settlements in Boston and Atlanta. Even Marlene admitted the military and Fedra are winning the war against the Fireflies.
Are the Fireflies beating Fedra anywhere? Rebellion takes time. You fight for 20 years and you get nowhere, you're not a rebellion. Just spray paint.
The Federal Disaster Response Agency, known as Fedra, is basically a totalitarian government agency.
Violation of ENC 342.3. Unauthorized exit from a quarantine zone. Each of you have been tried in a military court of justice, and each of you having been found guilty.
After the cordyceps brain infection ravaged the United States in 2003, Fedra, in conjunction with the military, was tasked with managing the outbreak and preserving society. Fedra subsequently replaced the civilian political leadership and other state organs of the US government. They utilized the military's significant capabilities to set up fortified quarantine zones in major population centers across the United States, separating the remaining population from the hordes of infected that roamed the nation. These zones are heavily defended and policed, with massive walls surrounding the perimeter. This was coupled with routine foot, vehicle, and helicopter patrols to deter survivors from sneaking in or out. In the years since the outbreak, Fedra forced civilians wishing to gain residency in the quarantine zones to be chemically cleansed and check for any signs of cordyceps infection. Those who failed the inspection or tested positive were immediately killed, either by gunshot or lethal injection, before their bodies were subsequently burnt to halt the spread of infection. To promote security and stability in the zone, Fedra and the military established numerous checkpoints that residents had to regularly go through. Citizens in Fedra detention are supposed to be guaranteed the right to a lawyer, medical attention, a family visit, plus food and water. But Kathleen implied these rights were not always given, at least within the notorious Kansas City quarantine zone. This led Kathleen and her brother to form the Kansas City Resistance and overthrow Fedra in their region. It's explained that Fedra allowed civilians like Joel and Tess to volunteer for work and earn extra ration cards. These duties usually involve physical labor, from burning dead bodies, street sweeping, cleaning sewer systems, scrubbing subversive graffiti off city walls, or helping with outside work duties. At least in areas firmly under their control, the group would also apparently expand and contract the size of quarantine zones based on the zone population. For example, the Boston Federal Garrison was actually in the process of clearing, repairing, and opening several city blocks of new housing for residents, since the population was growing and housing was scarce. According to Henry, around 5 years after the establishment of the QZ in Kansas City, Fedra began a clearing operation that successfully drove the infected population completely underground. They continued to keep the surface clear of infected in and outside of the city for 15 years before the zone fell. However, their tyrannical actions quickly drew discontent from zone residents and outsiders, inspiring the formation of the militia group known as the Fireflies. The Fireflies are the main revolutionary militia group in The Last of Us that revolted against military oppression, intending to restore democratic government control.
We've been blowing up meaningless Fedra targets spread out all over the QZ. What's the point of this?
Is that your question?
That's one of them.
My answer is to follow fucking orders.
We are in a war against a military dictatorship to restore democracy and freedom. Does that sound about right? Yes?
Are we winning? Are we beating Fedra here?
I want Fedra everywhere but here, because tonight, every Firefly in Boston is gonna gather in this building, and we are gonna leave the QZ permanently. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. We'll get her where she needs to go.
Prior to 2023, the Fireflies formed under the leadership of Marlene in response to the military's inadequate solutions to the cordyceps brain infection. The militia grew tired of Fedra's repressive tactics and suppression of civil rights, and they aimed to restore pre-outbreak democracy through repressive tactics and suppression of civil rights. The irony is strong with this group. They also blame Fedra for discontinuing research into a cure, leading them to create campaigns at overthrowing the regime in quarantine zones across the nation. Of course, the fighting between the two was largely responsible for the collapse of multiple areas, including the Pittsburgh quarantine zone. Fearing the Fireflies could beat them and cause chaos to erupt in the zones, Fedra established military schools to take orphans and help train the next generation of cadets. Fedra and the military designated them as a terrorist organization and openly hunted them in the quarantine zones. After discovering that Ellie was immune, they tasked Joel with smuggling her out of the quarantine zone and back into the hands of the militia. The Kansas City Resistance, also referred to as revolutionaries or rebels, are another hostile revolutionary group we discussed earlier.
Did it feel good, betraying your neighbors to Fedra? Did it make you feel better, watching us hang? How does it make you feel now?
Are we really putting them on trial?
No. When you're done, burn the bodies. It's faster.
Based in Kansas City, they're comprised of former quarantine zone residents that turned to banditry as supplies dwindled. After the cordyceps brain infection outbreak, Fedra and the military established a quarantine zone in Kansas City to protect its remaining non-infected citizens. However, unrest and discontent grew with their oppressive rule. This was because Fedra limited the food supply and turned people against one another through blackmail, torture, and enforced collaboration. Their tyranny culminated in Michael forming a resistance group to drive them away from the city. Michael provided a code for the group to follow, with their intended goal being freedom from tyranny and oppression and the pursuit of a free and peaceful society. As a result of the stirring rebellion, the military began restricting rations further, especially drugs and medicines for the sick, forcing them to turn against the resistance. This led to Henry informing Federal officials where Michael was hiding to secure medication for his ill brother Sam. Michael was subsequently captured, tortured, and executed, kicking things into overdrive. His sister Kathleen would then launch an open war against Fedra and the military, and after reclaiming the city, the resistance captured Fedra soldiers and enacted their own revenge, fueling the vicious cycle of violence, hate, revenge, and retribution that seems to consume most survivors in the wasteland. Over the following 10 days, the resistance group turned the city into their own dictatorship, with the militia raiding several homes and attacking citizens to find Henry and the other collaborators. Perry also established guards around the city perimeter to prevent people from leaving the city and also to ambush and steal supplies from any survivors that wandered in. This puts their sights on Joel and Ellie when they make their way through the city. Scattered between Fedra, the Fireflies, and the Kansas City Resistance are raiders, cannibals, communes, and other survivors doing what they can to endure. After the outbreak, several people that avoided infection became reclusive and paranoid about Fedra's efforts to offer them protection in quarantine zones. many refused to join and instead established their own independent and nomadic survivalist groups. By 2010, their supplies began to run out, leading them to transform into hostile raiders that took advantage of other smaller groups. This desperation was shared by a religious group led by a menacing preacher named David that Ellie is forced to defeat.
For what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear. If you want to judge me...
Judge you? You're eating people, you sick f***!
It was a last resort. What was I supposed to do? Let them starve? These people who expect me to keep them safe, who love me? What does cordyceps do? Is it evil? No. It feeds and protects its children, and it secures its future with violence if it must.
David formed the congregation in 2017 after the Pittsburgh quarantine zone collapsed. He believed the cordyceps brain infection caused an apocalypse similar to the one predicted in the Christian faith and prophesied in the book of Revelations. The congregation struggled to settle in a single location, constantly facing attacks from raiders. However, they did manage to settle in the Silver Lake Holiday Resort in the mountains of Colorado sometime before the winter of 2023. There they would all meet in Todd's kitchen diner to eat and pray together, with David regularly holding sermons for the group and preaching his interpretation of the Bible. By the winter of that year, the deep snow and lack of animals to hunt led David to decide the group had to resort to cannibalism to survive. Unbeknownst to his congregation, he and his men began feeding their people the bodies of their dead, in addition to capturing and murdering any travelers they encountered for food. That is, of course, until they are brought down by Joel, and particularly Ellie.
Turn and face me. Slow. Any sudden moves, I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy.
Offering an alternative to Fedra, the Fireflies, and the oppressive regimes of all the other groups, a commune was formed in Jackson, Wyoming, devoted to non-hostile collaboration and support. In this community, supply sharing, trust, and doing one's part were the biggest principles. By the winter of 2023, the group had grown to around 300 strong, but still kept their isolationist ways, preferring to keep their successful lifestyle a secret. They then began forming a reputation as brutal survivors to deter others from taking what they built.
How do you keep this place quiet?
Carefully. Being in the middle of nowhere helps, not advertising what we have, staying off the radio. Everyone pitches in, we rotate patrols, food prep, repairs, hunting, harvesting.
Everything you see in our town, all shared.
Can I ask you a serious question?
Yeah.
Why did the Scarecrow get an award?
Because he was outstanding in his field.
You dick!
Joel, did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
It runs in your genes.
You laughed, motherfucker.
I didn't laugh.
Yes, you did.
Jesus, I'm losing it.
You're losing it big time. Damn.
You're no Will Livingston.
Yeah, but who is?
It goes without saying that Ellie Williams and Joel Miller are the central characters and focal point of both the games and television series. Much of the show's success rests on Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey navigating their mission, the new world around them, and their growing sense of family through struggle. Keeping the essence of the games, the actors are able to create new characters that they own. Pascal's Joel is a bit more wounded and physically vulnerable than his game counterpart. While still as deadly when pushed, he's gripped by momentary bouts of fear and suffers from mild hearing loss, making his job of protecting Ellie all the more difficult. After losing his only daughter Sarah during the early stages of the outbreak, Joel and his brother Tommy became hardened survivors in a post-apocalyptic America. Quite often, they did anything and everything they needed to do to survive, which included harming innocent people, something that weighs heavy on their mind. Miller found his way into becoming a skilled black market smuggler in the Boston quarantine zone, aided by his amazing weapons, melee combat, and survival skills. Tasked with protecting the 14-year-old girl and transporting her to the Fireflies, he learns that she was immune and held the key to creating a cure. When he finally finds Tommy at the commune, the initial reason he accepted the job of transporting Ellie, he's so unsure of himself that he even begs his brother to take her the rest of the way.
You know, she saved my life there. From another kid. 5 years ago, I would have destroyed him. You think I can still handle things, but I'm not who I was. I'm weak. You want me to take her. I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it. I know it. I have to leave her.
Everybody I have cared for left me. Everybody fucking except for you! So don't tell me that I'd be safe with somebody else, because the truth is, I would just be more scared.
At Joel's heart, he's a fatherly figure with an inherently protective nature over those he cares for, one with a proclivity for driving him to darkness and violence when control is taken from him. After losing Sarah, he felt as though he'd lost his purpose for living and began to close off emotionally from others. That was until he was tasked with protecting and transporting Ellie Williams.
Now! Let's see what I go tell the others now.
Tell them that Ellie is a little girl who broke her f***ing finger! Wait, don't! I'm infected! And now so are you.
Born to Anna Williams in 2009, who was bitten on the thigh by an infected woman as she gave birth, Ellie was exposed to cordyceps through the umbilical cord, but did not develop any symptoms. The transferred antibodies and enzymes from her mother, who was of course played by Ashley Johnson, the original voice of Ellie in the video games, made her immune to infection. Unlike Blade, who suffered a similar fate, she doesn't have any enhanced powers or anything, and can in fact still be torn apart by the infected. Anna's friend Marlene found the two, and after promising to keep Ellie safe, killed Anna before she turned. During the next 14 years, Ellie grew up in a Federal military school as an orphan in the Boston QZ until she was handed over to Joel for protection and transportation. Of course, the Fireflies didn't realize how seriously Joel would take this role. Although initially trying to keep a distance, Ellie's enthusiasm to finish the mission, her curiosity of the world that was, and their shared trials and tribulations leads to Joel letting his guard down. He's a completely different person by the end of the series, going from a wounded man that refused to talk about his daughter in the past to sharing key moments in Sarah's life with Ellie. He even points out that despite their differences, the two girls would have been great friends, something that Ellie agrees with. Likewise, Ellie feels as though everyone she ever cared for had either died or abandoned her until Joel, and she's able to open up about mistakes in her past that also haunted her. That's not to say that she is incapable of taking care of herself, with Ellie often surprising both friend and foe at her numerous skills and foul mouth for a child of her age. Although transporting her was initially just a means to an end, Ellie becomes his purpose for living.
If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on?
You keep going for family.
I'm not family.
No. Your cargo. Look, sometimes things don't work out the way we hope. You can feel like you've come to an end, and you don't know what to do next. But if you just keep going, you find something new to fight for.
By the end, the girl is also willing to die for Joel, taking on cannibals to buy him time to recover from a serious injury.
So time heals all wounds, I guess.
It wasn't time that did it.
While Joel is content with them turning back and joining the safety of the commune, Ellie encourages them to push on, believing that they had the chance to save the world. Along the way, they hit many of the same iconic beats in the game, with minor deviations. Unfortunately, when they reach the Fedra base they'd spent months trying to find, Joel is knocked out and given the worst news possible when he awoke. The Fireflies are prepping Ellie for surgery. Their doctor thinks her immunity is caused by the cordyceps that bonded with her DNA at birth, releasing a chemical messenger that tricked cordyceps into thinking she was already infected. The doctor hoped to replicate the chemical messenger in a lab, potentially creating a cure, but there's no guarantee this is going to work, and with no other immune person for them to work with, they are not willing to risk the possibility that Ellie would say no. Without giving either one of them a choice in the matter, they want to begin dissecting her brain in an effort to produce a cure for the cordyceps brain infection. Despite faced with the possibility of returning civilization back on track, unable to lose another child, Joel engages beast mode, single-handedly wiping out the entire Resistance headquarters and medical staff before taking Ellie away to safety. He even kills Marlene, who explained he murdered the only surgeon that was capable of synthesizing a cure from Ellie's blood. Like any father, he would rather let the world continue to burn than lose another daughter.
He had a guitar in that RV. I haven't played in forever. In fact, I was thinking maybe I could teach you. I bet you'd be great at it.
But Ellie is not his daughter, and despite her young age, he didn't give her a choice in the matter either. This is why he lied to Ellie when she asked what happened, telling her they found more immune people and that they no longer needed to use her for testing, as a cure wasn't possible. The closing shot of her face implies that she doesn't entirely believe him, creating nervous doubt as to whether everything's going to work out. HBO are known to put a considerable amount of talent and financial support in their productions, and it was great to see that this was also true of this series. Adapting a game, turning an active experience into a show, is no easy feat, and it definitely helped having one of the chief architects of the game working hand in hand with the chief architect of television, who understands the new format structure, writing, and pacing that should go with it. Having said that, there were some episodes that didn't really tie directly to Joel and Ellie's journey, and despite being entertaining and emotionally resonant, they felt like filler material to pad their runtime. And I know I'm kicking a dead horse here, but apart from a few exciting and well-executed action set pieces with the infected, there aren't a lot of them in the show. It's like World War Z without the Z's, or the original ending by Max Brooks.
Boom. Roasted.
The show really banks on the moral dilemma of the Fireflies wanting to operate on Ellie and Joel not wanting her to die, a situation that removes autonomy from Ellie. But at the crux is supposed to be desperation. If the infected are everywhere and a looming threat, there is more impetus to side with the Fireflies. My only concern is that the infected are all in concentrated areas around the cities, and while a select few evolve into infected variants that survive for years, most die out as empty husks. For me, paired with the limited number we actually saw, this gave the impression that the infected weren't as much of a threat as humanity was on itself. That was just my thoughts on it, and of course I'd love to hear what your opinions are below. With all that said, I really liked the show and was pleasantly surprised by Season 1. I am worried about Season 2 though, for obvious reasons. No spoilers in the chat. And I guess this is the first time I wanted the writers of Game of Thrones back with HBO, given their proclivity of ignoring the ending of the source materials they work with.
Boom. Roasted. All right, everybody. You know I kid. Good night. God bless America, and get home safe.
With that said, that's all for today, folks. A huge thanks to everyone that requested we explore The Last of Us. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if there's anything else you'd like for me to cover, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film and Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
1, 2, up! Damn it, Ellie! Shh. Ellie!
Come on!
Can you hurry up? Come on.
He's there.